Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Raggio. I'm a senior fellow at Foundation for Defense of Democracies and editor of FDD's Long War Journal. This is Generation Jihad, the podcast that covers all things in what used to be known as the global war on terror, but we now call the Long War. Joined today by my co-host on Wednesdays, Will Selber. Will is a man who wears many hats. He's a retired Middle East Foreign Area Officer, contributor to The Bulwark, proprietor of Grumpy Combat Veteran and Friends. Highly recommend you go and subscribe to Will and Grumpy Combat Veteran and Friends on Substack. Will also hosts the podcast Shoulder to Shoulder, Untold Stories from a Forgotten War, and Stories from My Brothers, Tales of the Afghan Security Forces. Hello, Will. Welcome back. Happy Wednesday, I guess.
Yeah. It's going to be an upbeat episode. I have a feeling in my bones. I mean, the anniversary of 9/11, we're just going to get into. It's going to be upbeat.
Yeah, it's, I was preparing for this today, Will. And I think I was telling you earlier, I really wanted to crack a beer for this episode because it's just it's a solemn day. It's one that weighs heavily on me. It's a day we should not, as Americans, should not forget, but I fear many have, and they've forgotten all too easily. Look, I understand those who were born afterwards. It's probably like, Pearl Harbor to me, but Pearl Harbor, frankly, pisses me off too. And, look, I'm still pissed off at the British for the Revolutionary War. I'm Italian. I could hold a grudge, man.
There you go, Rot. There you go. I love it.
That's just me, but I just wish we, as a country had a little bit more of that in us. Well, we're joined by a special guest today, a friend of Generation Jihad, even though she hasn't been on. Beth Bailey. She's the head or the proprietor of the Afghanistan Project podcast. Beth does wonderful work. I highly recommend you all go over and listen to Beth, and you can follow Beth on at BWBailey85 and follow her on X, or what used to be known as Twitter. Beth served in the intelligence community and covered the Taliban and a host of other issues. Beth, welcome to Generation Jihad. So good to have you on.
Oh, it is amazing to be here, and that was the best introduction I've ever had. So thank you for that too.
Well, thanks a lot, Beth. You've been on my podcast before. Now thanks a lot, Bill. Now I'm gonna have to raise my level. Thanks.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
I really had to do out Will on that one.
Yeah.
It's just, but it's heartfelt. I've been on Beth's podcast a couple times. Really, very range of topics on Afghanistan, just like Will does on his two podcasts. Beth covers a lot of issues, touches a lot of the issues we don't cover. I mean, look, we're Generation Jihad. We're covering the terrorist groups, the individuals, what's happening in the war. But Beth and Will, they get far deeper into the issues of Afghanistan and those who fought in those wars. And I'm envious and in their ability to broach those topics, to cover them in depth. And I'm thankful that they do what they do.
You're very kind.
Look, anyone who knows me knows I don't blow smoke. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true.
You seem like I don't know. I've just always thought you maybe you're an optimistic fellow.
Just like you. Well, just
that's
like
exactly right. Look, he's grumpier than
me.
He's grumpier than me. I will not take any grump. He's the grumpiest.
So I'm going to touch. I remember when I was the eternal optimist. And that was in the 2000s. And like I supported the surge in Iraq when you could fit the number of people who thought it was a good idea in Washington, D.C. You could put them in a phone booth, and because I was a believer, right? And, but it's not the guys fighting. It's not the Wills and Beths of the world who've, served our country. I don't blame them. It's our leadership. It's our military leadership, our political leadership that has let us down. And it's hard to be an optimist in these circumstances. I surround myself with people who are a little bit more optimistic than me. And then I'll take all the bullets. It's all.
That's the way.
Yeah. So Beth, you worked in the intelligence community. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've done, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I developed an obsession with Afghanistan, or you can call it a God moment, whatever it was. Like Afghanistan just spoke to me, and I knew I had to work on trying to improve that country. I was an optimist as well, Bill, back in those heady days of my youth. And I got a job offer with the National Ground Intelligence Center right out of college and started in that role advising senior leadership about what was going on with Taliban senior leadership. And I took it so seriously. It mattered so much to me. I had analyst notebooks that were just like 300-person collections of personalities. And just at the same time that was happening, I was madly in love with this infantry Marine who had just finished IOC. And it was the surge, he was getting ready to probably get sent over to Helmand. And luckily, he didn't get sent to Helmand until later in 2011 when we weren't dating any longer. But those things happened at the same time. And I was like, oh my gosh, what you're doing here really matters, because people like your boyfriend are going to be in harm's way and you better do a damn good job. So I did the best job I could. And in 2013, I departed the intelligence community and proceeded to just grow very angry about what was happening with Afghanistan, because it was going all in the wrong direction. I think I was there. I believed in the surge. I really thought that it was going to make a difference. And then it was very clear that it was just going to cost lots of blood. And we weren't going to retain the territory that we gained. And it just slowly slid back to Taliban control. And we started negotiating with the Taliban. And that's where I led in 2013 to just being an angry housewife, not watching the Taliban in Afghanistan anymore for several years.
Yeah, I think that, the Afghan surge, that's when I think I became skeptical of the whole thing. That's when I knew it wasn't going to work. I remember Tom Jocelyn and I talking about it, writing about it, that it was just not going to be resourced properly. The time limitation that the president put on it, just the way that it was implemented. There was much division between the military and the Obama administration. It was basically coerced on the Obama administration, and I was just cynical about that at that point. And I think it's been all downhill since.
Bill, I would just like to say that I will echo Beth. Like Captain Selber during Obama's surge was proud to serve. He was. It was my first Afghan hand assignment. I had already served once in Afghanistan on a provincial reconstruction team. By the time I went in 2012 to Afghanistan, it was like my third deployment or something like that. Or I don't know, fourth actually. And I was so excited, Bill, because it was an interesting program. Like, when you talk about Afghan local police, you're basically talking about like a grassroots anti-Taliban militia with a veneer of state, sanction that can really maybe get to the heart of the matter. And I thought that there was a lot of interesting parts to it, and I was really interested in it. I saw it implemented up in Kunduz, Bill, and there it looked great. It was like they had all the uniforms. You could see that they were taking it seriously, like they had state support. And then when I was in Gorak, the ALP was just all those guys in that other village over there. Let's just get them in here. We're going to give them some money. And then like they did some training, and like they're like, you are now ALP. And I was like, well, I don't think it's going to work. I remember having lunch. Sorry to talk so long, Bill Beth, with then Colonel Boldak, who was the head of, then became general and then ran for Senate. Man, he was all in on it. And I told him that, hey, there's a big difference between what I see up north and down south. There's a disparity in the quality of this, and it's not being evenly implemented across. And I hope that this is what I used to tell village elders, Bill. I made the case for them to join sides with us. That was basically my job. I would go in to talk to the tribal elders and try to like talk to them about why they should join us. And you know what? They didn't. A lot of them didn't, because they were like, "You're going to leave, and it's just going to be me sitting here, and they're going to kill my sons and daughters when you leave, like you always do." I mean, and let me tell you something, Bill. That cuts to the heart of you. You're just like, and you know what? They were right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you believed it, though, you know.
Oh,
and
yes, I
But
did.
everything you said, Bill, about timelines, you know, anytime a timeline would come up, I'd be like, what the hell? Why are you doing that? You're telling them when we're, you know, don't do that. Don't tell them when we're going to be done with this and when we're going to quit, because the Taliban are just waiting. They're waiting for that. And they'll wait us out every time. And like you said, Will, there was such an uneven distribution of resources across the country. Everything was its own special thing, owned by a different country element. And like, it was just, you're right. I say I had optimism, but I think from the start, I was like, you know, there are a lot of ways to improve this very haphazard assembly of parts.
And Beth, you mentioned the, you know, different countries have ownership. Even within the U.S. military, there were issues. I remember the Marines refusing to, and I don't blame them, by the way, giving elements of their forces over to Army because they were in combat operations in Helmand, and they're like, we need these assets. Like there were disputes within the U.S. Marine Corps and the U.S. Army on how things should be done and how assets should be distributed. So, you know, we could sit here and yes, look, the NATO, the ISAF, which, by the way, the International Security Assistance Force, I always loved
I Saw Americans Fighting.
Or I Suck at Fighting was another one that I've heard, right? I mean,
I love my European allies. It's just a joke.
That's, you know, we could blame, you know, what they had that book of, what did they call them? The restrictions on, or whatever I forget what it was.
The ROE?
No, ROEs, yeah. Rules of
engagement? It was, I remember I forget what they called it.
Are we talking about the crystals, like rules of like trying not for it to be, you would get medals for not escalating to a certain level?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. During the height of like the population-centric counterinsurgency with McChrystal, he was trying to figure out ways to incentivize people to not be so deadly and like to be more precise with like bombs and precision things. So you could kind of like, okay, but like to the guy on the ground, you know, I remember sitting in a village, Bill, with, you know, just a grunt. And I love grunts because they protect fat guys like me. They would be like, "Sir, I'm not a caseworker, you know. I just like to pull the trigger and it go bang bang. Like I don't know anything about this fancy crap that y'all talking about." And I'm like, population centric counterinsurgency, where the rubber meets the road. I mean, it's just I signed up to pull the trigger. I heard that from Marines who I love, training them at 29 Palms. They're like, "I'm so tired of passing out soccer balls. I'm ready just to pull the trigger, sir." I'm like, got it. And I totally get it. And it was just, you know, we talk about Afghanistan, 9/11, you know, somebody did PRTs, Bill. I did PRTs. I did village stability operations. I advised the Afghans. I was in the attaché. We didn't have enough control of violence. And we tried to do reconstruction projects before we did controlling violence and having security. And that was a huge mistake, and it cost us credibility with the Afghans. But even after all the mistakes that we made, Bill, you know, even after everything we did, there were still a lot of Afghans who believed in us.
Yeah.
They believed in us. And whatever people want to say about the war, and I'm sure you probably all agree broadly, you can, you know, think whatever you want about this or that, or how the American military really screwed up and the State Department did, and, you know, the Biden administration did. But there were millions of Afghans who believed in us. I know because they're friends of mine, and they went all in on us because they said, America won't abandon us. I believe the Will Selbers and all his friends in the world, whose their job is to sell America to the Afghans. That was basically what I did. And like so many of them believed in us, Bill, so many.
And, you know, Beth and Will, you talk to far more Afghans than I do. They still believe in us. That's what's amazing. They still believe, and I don't know what to think of that. How about you, Beth?
It breaks my heart, and it is kind of amazing. I think I've only had 2 Afghans of the hundreds that I've spoken with since the withdrawal who have said, screw the US for doing this to us and for leaving me behind and not processing my special immigrant visa. For the rest, it's like, can you just help me get my case along? My case is stuck. Can you do this? Can you help? And I don't think I could keep up that level of hope for so long. It's really incredible.
They are extremely resilient people. I must say it surprised me. Beth, I just wanted to comment real quick. I came across NGIC intelligence, or that's the National Ground Intelligence.
Yes.
When I was working on a case, we were this was in 2020, 2021, and where the family members of soldiers or servicemen who were killed in Afghanistan, they sued Iran for supporting the Taliban and Al Qaeda, and we won that case. And we came across a lot of good NGIC intelligence that helped prove our case. I always go back to the one that always just sticks with me is Kari Bariel, who was a mid-level Taliban leader. He's now like a governor. He worked with the IRGC, was taking money in the heart of Kabul. He was part of the Kabul attack network, the group that was attacking U.S. and Western forces and the Afghan security forces in and around Kabul. I just wanted to mention that work that you guys did at NGIC was...
NGIC is the best. So as an old intel officer, now grumpy combat veteran, I would say that like NGIC was my favorite. Them and the Marine Corps Intelligence Agency, MCIA. I thought that they produced products that were great for tactical level intelligence units supporting those maneuver elements on the ground. It was short, concise. I could understand it. It could provide me with the heuristic to tell my operators who these guys were and answer the why. Why are we fighting these? Because these guys are linked to this guy and these guys are linked to this guy. Because when you're a tactical intelligence officer, right, supporting maneuver units, you don't have the time to think big. And like you're trying to put out fires. IED will probably be here on the left-hand side between this time and this time. We've had this type of stuff going on. So you don't have the luxury to just delve into and give you the big picture. And I loved NGIC. I would tell every one of my young analysts or any type of young intelligence officer, you should read them. And I still would, even when I left. They were on my little favorites bar on my little top secret computer. NGIC, boom. I want to read what they have to say because it's always good.
Yeah, we took a lot of crap from other intelligence agencies for what we were saying about Taliban capabilities, but my fellow analysts worked so hard, and you're right. I think they were very good at here's the big picture and scaling it down. Because it's not easy all the time to write something at a TSSCI level and then have it. There's an art to getting it downgraded enough that you can send it to somebody in the field and get it, SNF or what have you. So I think that was an important aspect of it too. You need, if you can't describe it shortly, then you really don't know it. You might have this great big analyst notebook and this great big set of ideas, but if you can't succinctly tell it to somebody else, you don't. And it's funny, you mentioned Kari Bariel, Bill, I all those names, they're like in this distant recess of my mind because I don't see them every day. And so the other day I was having a discussion with somebody about, maybe it was about Berater, I can't remember, but I ended up, I was like, no, I'm pretty sure this was the role that person had at this very brief moment. And I found this great 50-page readout of all of the TBSL, and I printed it out. Now I'm just going to make my own analyst notebook at home so that it's like this unclassified version of all these guys. And they all, as soon as you start getting back into it, you're like, oh yeah, I remember him and him and him. It's always a him because it's the Taliban. At least I know that, right? They're all dudes. It's a sausage fest, but
It really is.
They have
I love it.
Women worthy of the Taliban is when
I just want I want everybody.
They're throwing a suicide bomb under their skirt.
If you don't mind, Bill, I just want to kind of underscore a little bit about what Beth said before we hand it back over to you. I just would, the reason why Beth's writing is so good, in my opinion, is because she has so much experience tracking these people. So she has the ability to write, from the Taliban leaders and what they're doing perspective, like following them, which I have a hard time doing because even my head, they all start to run together and I can't keep track of them all anymore. But Beth, when she writes for the Washington Examiner, or when she writes for the Fox News, or when she writes from her new Substack, Beth's Substack, it's always good, and I always read it because she's able to tell me some of the other things that are going on in Afghanistan, other than like, this is what Sarajad Hakouni is doing right now. Because who wants to read about that guy?
Who cares about
that guy? Sucks. And so, like, let's read about something else that's depressing. So I usually read Beth, right? I'm like, all right, let's get some more in here. I see everything's going well, but I just appreciate it, Beth, all the work that you do, the writing that you do, keeping the torch going, because let's be honest, it's the 23rd or 24th anniversary of public math, 9/11. And, there's not a lot of us that are keeping this torch lit. It's just a few that keep on trying to fight.
It is hard. It was my pitch when I started my Substack. I made a little video and put it on Instagram. I was like, guys, if you're sick of being depressed by the election cycle, come be depressed by Afghanistan on my Substack. Like, come on. It's a great place to be. Yeah.
So somewhere out there's a therapist listening saying, these people really need help. Like help I can't provide.
I'll give you a discounted rate. Like, just come see me.
It's true though. You get into, and it's, look, I take a bit of, I look at Afghanistan. Obviously it's a big focus of my work, but I'm looking at the entire world, and I'm looking at what's going on in the war in Israel and Iran and the war in Ukraine. Yet my heart always goes back to Afghanistan because of, it just to me seems to be, it explains everything about our failures everywhere. I fear we're not learning the lessons of it. And we don't want to learn the lessons of it because it'd be too embarrassing politically for both sides.
Yes.
And that's just a real problem. So, Beth, and I'm going to ask you the same question, Will. Where were you on 9/11? How old were you? If you don't mind answering that question.
Great question.
How did 9/11 impact you?
So I do not at all mind answering that question. I had just turned 14 and I was in middle school, and I remember being in civics class, and the cut up of the class came in late and said, "Hey, somebody just flew a plane into a building." And my teacher was like, "That's nonsense. Sit down, like stop distracting everyone." Right. And we all sat and continued. And then I had a study block, and I remember watching at the TV in the corner of the room, everything happening, and just being terrified. I was in school in Norfolk, Virginia, so naval base right nearby. My dad worked around that area, and I was terrified about what was going to happen and who was going to get targeted next. And I will always remember coming home that day. My dad always worked till 5 or 6 p.m. And my dad is a wheelchair bound veteran. And his van, you always remember the blue sky, right? It was so beautiful. It was just the most beautiful day. I get off the bus. I'm the only person at my stop. I'm walking down my dead street. There's no motion. It's usually there are kids playing, and there's my dad's van in the driveway. And I was like, holy shit, that never happens. And I walked in. He didn't even say a word to me. He was just sitting, his wheelchair was sitting in front of the TV. I will always remember just the motes of, substance in the air coming down through the sun. And the sun, there was a big window in the ceiling, a sun window, whatever the hell you call those things. And just, he was so still, and I was watching him watch everything. And the thing that always hits me is, by this point in the afternoon, we all knew the sequence, but nothing on TV was happening in the sequence of events, right? You would watch the planes hit the towers after you watched the towers collapse. And it was just so disconcerting. And at one point he looked at me and he said, "Your world will never be the same." And that was the only thing he said to me that afternoon. And he was so right. He was so right. And he didn't know how I was going to, what my life was going to look like, that I was going to become this passionate advocate for bringing security to Afghanistan to then bring security to the world. And I didn't know that at the time. I was 14 years old, but it was definitely, my whole life did change. Everything became scary and different. And now we're launched into this war on multiple fronts. And yeah, it was that day. I read to my kids about it every year. I have at least a dozen 9/11 books because I want them to understand, and they'll never experience it, I hope, the way that I did, but I'm beginning to lose hope in that too. So anyway, that's my 9/11 story.
How about you, Will?
What a great story. No, it was great.
I mean, it's fascinating. Your father, couldn't have been more right. I wonder what he thinks today about, saying that.
He has a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah, I bet he does.
Well, it changed us all, though.
It does.
All three of us here, and certainly I would guarantee for our audience as well. Everyone has a story from that day. Go ahead, Will. Tell us your story.
Yeah, man. I wish it was like this uplifting story, but like I woke up. I graduated from college in 2000 in history and philosophy, and like any good history and philosophy double major, I had no job on the outside. Shocking. It's so shocking. How nobody wanted to hire me. Who would have thought? This is a true story, Bill. And I can hear my wife saying, "Don't tell them the real story," but I'm going to do it anyways. I was a DJ. Yes, with turntables after college.
Will.
Yes. Called me Origin Israel. This is a true story. Lord help me, God. Somewhere there's a picture of me with turntables on and hat, and I'm like,
do you have the hat backwards?
Yes. I was Bill, I was really cool. I just want you to know I was the coolest man on the planet. At least I thought so. Very cool. I made no money and I was a DJ and I lived in like an apartment with a bunch of people. And then 9/11 happened. And I woke up and I'll be very honest, I was hungover and I had been up partying all night. And I looked and I said, this is it. I'm done. And the next day I called my father and I said, I'm going to join the military. And his father was a veteran and he said, you cannot enlist. And I do not want you to be. I was like, I'm going to go down to the Marine Corps enlistment center. And I did. And they pitched me real hard. But my father was in the Air Force, and he made me promise that I wouldn't do that. And so I didn't. And then I went to the Air Force, and I just had a non-traditional career as an intelligence officer. Not to bore everybody to death, but like I spent like six deployments, 4.5 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, more or less. Dear God, please don't everybody go back and start counting numbers, okay? I'm just broadly speaking. Dear God, have mercy. Just 4.5 years, and like. It changed my whole life. It made me who I am today, in the good and the bad. The man that I used to be before I went to Baghdad in 2006, he's gone. He's gone. And what you see in war changes you. I don't care if it's like pulling the trigger, which I did a few times, or if it's all the way, if it's back home providing operational and intelligence support to people in the field. Because one thing that I learned, Bill, and it took me until the latter part of my career when I was in the intelligence community as a commander, is that you don't have to be, you don't have to kill bin Laden to have had an effect on the war on terrorism on you. There is a generation of Beth Baileys out there in the world, right? Who are just crushing it inside the intelligence community, trying to do the right thing. But unfortunately, what I witnessed over 20 years of the intelligence community is the politicization of intelligence repeatedly throughout my 20 years. If it was calling, the sitcom JV team whole fiasco, where reporting on the Islamic State was, kind of pushed to the side, or any of the reporting over the last few years where Resolute Support really made it hard for people. And we're talking about me. It really made it hard for people to speak truthfully and honestly. about what was going on in Afghanistan. And, it's a shame, Bill. There was so many good Americans, like friends of mine, like Captain Jesse Milton, who was killed, who actually Corey Boreal led the IAD network that killed my friend Jesse Milton III, on September 9th of 2008. I think about him on days like this, Bill and Beth. I think about him. I just started being in contact with his mother. I have her phone number, and I'll be honest with you, I'm scared to death to make that text, but I'm going to because she deserves it. But I'll be honest with you, Bill, I don't know what to say other than I'm sorry and I loved your son. And that's all you can do now because they have taken, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, it's very dishonorable the way that the United States government has conducted, especially the last few years of the war. And those scars, those moral injuries have scarred a generation of American combat veterans deeply, specifically those who served as advisors.
Will has a great piece on Jesse Milton, his friend who was killed by the Taliban on September 9th. What year was that?
2008.
8?
Yeah.
Yeah. And on his Substack at Grumpy Combat Veterans and Friends. So give that a read. And that's the war changed so many people's lives. Like I wonder, where would I be today if 9/11 didn't happen? I mean, I worked in computers, I was a computer analyst. And I remember when it happened, I picked my son up from his babysitter, who was 1 year old. My son loved looking at the sky and looking at planes. There's no planes in the air. I knew that attack was Al Qaeda right away. It changed my life. It got me into studying this in depth. It wasn't a plan of mine. So yeah, it's crazy how this, it impacted me, not in ways as the Milton family or others have been, but it's changed all of our lives in ways we just can't even explain. Will, you had mentioned the intelligence failures recently. We had the deputy director of the CIA telling us that the Taliban are basically our counterterrorism partners. I'm going to start with you, Beth. How does something like this happen? Those of us who study Afghanistan know that the Taliban is not fighting Al Qaeda. And yet you have the deputy director of the CIA publicly stating that the Taliban is our effective counterterrorism partner and is actually taking the fight to Al Qaeda. How does this happen with the community?
I think it was. I still know people in the community who aren't that worried about the Taliban, which to me is like, what? I'm sorry. There's so much cognitive dissonance here. I don't understand what's going on. I don't know. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me, but I've seen the bricks that got us there, because that's what left me irate in 2013 when we said, hey, here, Taliban, have a negotiating office in Qatar. And they threw up their flag as if they were a government in exile rather than a terrorist entity that has no right in doing that. While there is a government that we've funneled time and money into building up, I think it was a slow progression. And I think that we have to think of them as our ally because we left them the country effectively. When we left the Afghan government out of negotiations and said, we're going to negotiate with you, Taliban, and then you can talk to the Afghan government and we'll let you do. It was just this massive act of self-deception in my mind that led us to this moment.
Do you think politics are involved in this as well? I mean, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, has to be in order. He's a political appointee. Does in order
with no experience in Afghanistan, really. I mean, like tangential. At the Treasury level, if I remember correctly, Bill. I might be.
And that's an interesting
that's
point.
Fine.
People that I know who know him were surprised by that.
Really? Okay.
Because he hadn't been operated in this manner in the past. That's what was striking about this to some. So
I just, if I may, with the thing that Beth, that for me, what upsets me about this, there's a lot. I mean, I I know that this isn't news breaking that he said it, right? But for me, it caught my attention. And the reason why it really upset me is that they know that they can just say this out loud now and that nobody's going to care. And that's what part that really kind of hurts, that you can like say this type of stuff on on August 28th, I think late August, while every American Afghan combat veteran is grieving the last 20 years of the war. The CIA leadership decided this was the opportune time to reiterate yet again that they think the Taliban is a good counterterrorism partner. And okay, just if you're going to say that, I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong, blah, blah, blah. And, Bill and I and Beth can talk about that all day. But at least have the courage, at least have the moral fortitude to say, and we understand that this is a horrible thing to say to our American combat veterans, because we are now partnering with the people who killed their friends and are murdering and raping their friends' mothers, sisters, children. Those are my friends that they're doing that to, Bill. Those are my friends that they're doing that to. And it's very personal for those of us who were taught to stand shona bashona with our Afghan allies. Whatever their problems, whatever their issues, no space between us. And I will only advance as far as you're willing to go. And then I will step back when you're not. It's a betrayal of such magnitude, and I say it often, Bill, is that it covers the sun.
I would love to say that, for me, I think about these senior leaders of the Taliban and their discussions about how much calcium or, how much ammonium nitrate to give to each little provincial commander. And, that was a plan to go kill Americans and kill Afghans. And, just indiscriminately kill people. We're not talking about here are your weapons to use in a direct combat situation with other people on the ground. It's here's how to go do terror attacks. Here's how to convince people to go kill themselves in the name of Allah. And then they were providing security at HKIA. And now we are working with them as a counterterror ally as they let Al Qaeda have training camps throughout the country. It's just such a, like I say, self-deception. Like, were you not there? Were you not watching what they did?
Yes.
And since when, we went from calling them terrorists to, the de facto government. And to me, they're still terrorists. They lie about it. Oh no, we would never rape women. We don't do that. We protect our women. It's nonsense.
Let's get into that last subject, Beth. You've covered this extensively. What has happened recently with the Taliban with respect to women and rights in Afghanistan? I remember after 9/11, I remember President Bush standing up and, on national television and said, everybody send $1 in, for the Afghan people. And boy, we just seem to be so far from that. Now we're just talking about the Taliban back in control and dictating to Afghan women and Afghan children. Tell us what the Taliban has done, what decrees they've issued.
Yeah, so the newest decrees from August 22nd, they're really codifying all the things that they've been trying to do this entire time. And I'm sure you guys remember in the beginning when they said that they were going to respect the rights of Afghan women insofar as the laws of Islam allow, or whatever their specific wording was, which to anyone who understood the Taliban, they knew what that meant. They knew what Islamic law meant. And I remember too, Bill, I had Heather Barr on the show from Human Rights Watch a while back, and she talked about 9/11 and how that was when everybody decided, we need to go help the Afghan women who had been oppressed for 5 years, and it was like, now we're going to help. That's so that's where we are now. The Afghan women are living under oppression. These new laws, before the hijab law was kind of not entirely codified from my understanding, but now it's, you will cover your face in public. You will not wear anything sheer or tight that could expose anything. Even men can't wear like exercising shorts in public anymore. or anything that is tight, or I know, right? You can't.
How am I supposed to get my CrossFit on, Beth?
You need to be fully cloaked, sir. It's just going to help you sweat more.
But the guns.
But they can't look at men outside their own family now. So their gaze is restricted. They can't speak loudly in public, and they can't speak loudly in their own homes. And the reasoning is what I love here. It's because their voices are too intimate to be heard. And of course with the dress, it's all about avoiding temptation and tempting others. So really what it says is these men can't control themselves, so women have to be controlled. Before you couldn't go 45 kilometers without having, you had to have a mahram, a male escort with you who is a member of your family. But now you can't travel at all without a mahram, which means all these women who are trying to leave the country, trying to escape oppression, they can't do it. And the thing that I love about this is that the Taliban are now using women spies, and some of them are women who were previously arrested. And the goal, it's like, okay, well, we arrested you, but we'll let you go if you start spying on other women. Some of them have willingly said, hey, we'll take the job, because there aren't many jobs for women in Afghanistan and people don't like to starve. But what I love is that these women are going on patrols with the Taliban. Do you know, like, a normal Afghan woman is not allowed to be in the presence of a non-mahram male in Afghanistan unless she's a Taliban spy trying to find other. So there's just so much hypocrisy. The MSN quoted this woman who is a Taliban spy, and she basically said, women need to be staying home. They should be raising their children and serving their husbands and not worrying about anything else. It's like, well, what are you doing? You're not at home raising children, not worrying about anything else. You're worrying about what all these women are doing. So it's hypocrisy. It's terrible. Women are absolutely, I asked for, I wanted to cover a couple of stories of women who are angry about this. And I put the call out on social media. And before I knew it, I had, a dozen women. Like, I want to tell my story. I want to tell you how it is, because the Taliban are out there saying it's great. It's great to be a woman in Afghanistan. They're safe. They're provided for, whatever. And what women are telling me is, I want to kill myself. I am not allowed to smile. I am not allowed to leave my home. I feel unsafe. I don't know when they're going to come find me. I can't work. It's devastating for them.
Yeah. It's what happened is Afghanistan. The real victims in all of this, we should always remember, are the Afghans, right? Look, my brothers and sisters, friends of ours, were killed and maimed and wounded, and I grieve for them every day, and not to take away any of their sacrifice, but the people who have suffered more than anybody else are the Afghans. On our website, we have a really difficult article by an anonymous writer. He wrote it, called America's 9/11 Legacy, and I just can't emphasize enough, it's a very difficult read with this Army colonel who recounts that his sister was sexually assaulted, and kind of takes the reader through what that is like for a man who is no longer able to protect his family. That is part of America's 9/11 legacy. And I hate saying that, Bill. It doesn't give me joy believe me, reading those stories and sitting there with these people and understanding that trauma that they have is just entirely painful, and it's just heartbreaking, and it makes you full of shame. As an American combat veteran, I feel shame for what the government has done to my allies, and that's not fair. I shouldn't have to feel shame for my government for what they did. But I'll be honest with you, Bill. I spend most of my time and I have a lot of Afghan friends. The only people that can usually stand me. When I go in there and sit down with them, like, I'll always tell them, I'm so sorry for what we did to you. I'm so sorry, because you didn't deserve that.
They're always kind, though.
Yes.
When you say that, I even said, look, I'm not one to apologize for my government. It wasn't my decision, but I'm going to do so anyway. And I just sort of got the You don't have to do that. It's okay. We know it's not you, but still, yeah, we are responsible, right?
Yes.
I mean, we all are as Americans are responsible, even though that wasn't our decision. It's still bear the shame.
Can I make this a little bit political for you guys? Just a little tinge bit. Is that okay?
That's okay with me.
Okay. I just what we saw last night on the debates, and I don't want to get into anything other than like the little section of when both candidates decided to talk about Afghanistan. I just wanted to fall off my chair and start crying, like just as a collective. Like this is emblematic of the entire lost 20-year war, where like you had one candidate basically saying like standing by the decision to withdraw. Harris standing by Biden's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan, despite what Afghan women are going through right now. I mean, for me, it's always the same option. Like, if you're going to say, like, would you rather us be there and, like, muddling along, trying to figure it out, or would you rather have this other thing, like where the Taliban are now, gang raping women and all that type of stuff? I feel like the option is clear, but that's just me. But then you go on and like, President Trump doesn't get the leader of the Taliban the name correctly. And you're just like, his name is not Abdul. Maybe I heard that somebody said that he was talking about Mullah Bardar, and I think that's who it was. But it was just, and nobody talked about the Afghan people. Nobody talked about the fact that they were left behind. Nobody talked about the fact that our combat interpreters are left behind, and that I have friends who every day they have to survive in a ghoulish landscape that this country could never possibly fathom. They're just incapable of doing it.
I feel like a bobblehead right now, just shaking my head and nodding to everything you say. But Will, I wanted to say something about your piece, the one you referenced with the gang rape of the woman, because I think there's something that you didn't mention that's really important from that piece, is the fact that after that attack, the woman's family left her husband left her, because raped women have no value. She doesn't get to be with her kids anymore. Just the social implications of that. And it's not a one-off. Like that is a horrifying. I'm so glad you posted it. It's horrifying, but this is something that's happening. My friend Leslie Merriman has a whole nonprofit that she started to help Taliban rape victims. And they're not all adults. We're talking children. And it's just despicable and disgusting. And you're right, we don't talk about it. We just lob. It's sickening to me. I've never hated politics in my life until after the withdrawal. Now I'm just like, screw you all.
Yes,
I have no affinity for any of you, because you can't take any blame, and you can't stand up. I had hoped somehow, because, I'm a pessimist, but I have this little optimist streak that comes out right as I'm about to just go, fuck it all. Sorry about that. But
no apologies.
So I just had to, it just has been building inside of me. So anyway, I had this little streak of the thought of optimism that, okay, Biden isn't going to run for re-election. Maybe now he can say, I messed it all up. I shouldn't have done that, and here's why. And now let's try to move forward for all of the sake of all the veterans who every time I talk to you, Will, about this, I just want to give you a hug, because you shouldn't feel all of that shame for yourself. You don't deserve to feel any of it. No veterans do. And there's just so many reverberating waves of shit that have come out of this decision. And it does go back to Trump too. And it does go back to Obama too. And it does go back to Bush too. But couldn't Biden say now, I messed up and I apologize, and this is on my shoulders? But nobody will do that. Nobody's going to do that.
No, we've talked about this numerous times, accountability. I don't even think that word is in a dictionary in Washington. We shouldn't expect it. It's, those of us who aren't responsible for the decision, apologize it. Those who are responsible for it, pretend it didn't happen, and are unwilling to take responsibility. That's just the way it is. That's just the Washington two-step, I guess. They can't be wrong. They can't take responsibility. And the thing is, and this is what bothers me too. The press, I remember as the withdrawal was going on, and because of the number of reporters, and Beth, you could probably speak to this better than any of us. reporters and producers and others have, involved in news, a lot of them spent time in Afghanistan one way or another. They've made friends. They've had guest houses. They stayed at it long periods of time. And I heard tons of times, pre-interview or post-interview, they can't get away with this? How could this happen? And my response always was, they'll get away with it if you let them get away with it. They'll get away with it if you stop talking about it, if you don't hold them accountable for this. And it kind of got this sort of blank response usually, or no, that's not going to happen. But it did happen within 3 months of the withdrawal. Actually, by February, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, any real criticism of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, it ended. And, so it's not just our political leaders, I think the press, they're willing to give the administration a pass on this. I agree. Trump deserves blame. Obama deserves blame. Bush, everyone who's listens knows that I believe that, and that but the ultimate decision to withdraw and the way that it was done, that is the worst decision of all of these decisions that were made up until that point.
I think that, and here's the thing, like, for all of the listeners who are like, this guy's more to blame, this person did it. There was this point in 2017 on the third day of like August where the real decision was made, whatever. But you can't tell me that who's not responsible right now, right? Because right now there's only one president and he has been in office for almost 4 years. So this is his policy. Nobody forced him to put us on the pathway to recognizing the Taliban, because I think that's where we're going, Bill. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does it right before he leaves office and and then he will think that he is cementing his legacy by ending forever wars, because he's been trying. The Biden administration there's been a lot of press, Bill, I'm sure you've been watching it, about possibly making hints at leaving Iraq. They need to get out. Even though there's a surge in attacks, right? They're not back. They never went away. And so, like, time is a flat circle. We are incapable of learning our lessons, and I'm a broken record because of the all-volunteer force, because only a small percentage of the population shoulders decades of war. And when that happens and a small percentage of the population serves, provides intelligence support like Beth did, or does any of this type of stuff, then it can just recede into the background noise of American life. It's sad.
It is. It truly is. Any thoughts, Beth?
Oh, I had so many, and they're all competing in my head. Somebody needs to take accountability, and we need to. I'm sure you guys saw it too, in Britain, they're closing the Afghan embassy because the Taliban asked.
Yes.
The Taliban got rid of all the employees. They said, oh, you're not employed anymore. And it just made me think about, I've talked to the Honorable Manisha Bakhtari, who is the only acting female ambassador, I believe, in exile right now in Austria. She's still holding down her job. And it's like, what happens if all of these countries start falling? And then I looked it up. We closed the Afghan embassy here in 2022. So we did that before Europe started. But the thing that's different in my mind is that in Europe, do you guys remember last year when some Talib, I think he had travel restrictions on him, but he went to Germany. He somehow made his way to Germany, probably under his nom de guerre or something like that. And he was, at a mosque trying to build up support. And how many Afghan refugees went to Germany? Right? And now what? They're going to have Taliban cells in Germany that are going to be it's just, we have not thought at all about the effects of this. And now we've got, how many hundreds of thousands of Afghans are in processing for visas or refugee admissions programs for here, at the same time that I'm just watching all of the Americans getting angry about foreigners coming in. And so what are we setting Afghans off into in this country right now? Is it even better than what they're leaving? And the world to me is in a massive state of turmoil right now. So I'm leaving it to you guys to make me feel some hope, because right now I'm.
Well, you turned to Bill Raggio, and that's what he when you think about hope and optimism, I want you in your head to go, Bill Raggio. Bill, provide us some hopium. Let's give us some hopium, Bill. That's the toughest question you just asked, Beth, of your investigative career. Bill Raggio, provide us with a little bit of hope on Afghanistan.
I can't. I go back to the scene in Aliens. I think we should take off and nuke it from orbit. That's where my mind goes to. There's some hope in that, right? What? No, I go to Captain Selber for hope. That's where I go.
Yeah, I would just say, here's my hope. I have hope in the next generation of Afghan Americans. I have faith in the generation of Afghans who was raised and trained by the West, who came up through the Western system. Men like Lieutenant General Hibatullah Al-Azai, Lieutenant General Sami Sadat, very close friends of mine like Colonel Abdul Rahman Rahmani. These are very close friends of mine who studied at the most prestigious American and European military academies, graduated from undergraduate pilot training, went to Army Ranger School, graduated from West Point, went to the best schools, Oxford, places they sure as hell wouldn't let me into. These are the best trained, and I believe in them because I know how hard of workers they are. To know an Afghan refugee, by and large, you're always going to find bad ones. Look, find bad people everywhere. By and large, good people, and they're trying to make it. And these Afghan security force officers that are here, that are striving and succeeding in America, even though they washed upon shore, they are hope, and they are the inspiration that at some point in time, God willing, the Taliban's horrible reign will come to an end. And, however long it takes, it's a fight worth having, and it's a good fight. And it's never too late to do the right thing. That's what I tell myself. That's what I tell everybody when we fight about these things, 9/11, the war, Afghanistan, who's to blame, all this other stuff. I always say we should learn from it, but why don't we start acting differently right now? Because the best time to change what you're doing is right now. And you still can. You can do that. That is an option on the table to change. Is it gonna happen here soon? Probably not. But you never know. I don't know. That's what I got for you, Bill. How was that? Was that
you know what?
Was that a pony?
I go to you.
I gave you the pony.
Can I deflate that hope though for a hot second? Here's the problem. That's a great idea, and I love that, and I think that is the future. But that all of those terrorists that the Taliban are growing up in Afghanistan now are going to look at anybody who was educated in the West and then moved to the West and has the stink of the West upon them is going to be persona non grata, or they're going to lump them like Sami Sadat. I have heard great things, and then there are people who say terrible things, right? Just like Fauzia Kufi. Great things, terrible things. Anybody who rises to the level of prominence in Afghanistan is going to have some kind of baggage, even if it's perceived, that is going to create this. It's just everybody's coming after each other. And now you've got people who are in the diaspora, and it's going to be, well, you weren't here. You're not really Afghan. I've seen it with the previous generations who tried to come and, they're like, oh, well, I'm Afghan. I just was raised in the US. And then, Afghans said, you're not real. Like, get out of here with your bad self. Like, I don't want you here. So it's just, we're creating more and more layers of future conflict. I just see this ending up in future conflict, honestly.
Oh, of course. Let's hope so.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I mean, let's hope so. I hope that the Taliban is overthrown, and I hope that our friends are able to succeed. And the only thing I would say is that what Thomas Jefferson is not going to come over the Hindu Kush, and he's not going to fight like we fight and talk like we talk and execute warfare like we do. And you know what? Thank God, because the way that we did it and we advised Afghans led to their losing a war. So what I would tell our Afghan friends, and I tell this to everybody, take our money, take our resources, say, thank you so much. That's very interesting. And you go about fighting your war the way that you think is the best way that's going to put you and your people in the most advantageous way to destroy your enemy. That's just me.
That's my hope. There you go. Thank you, Will.
You're welcome.
It will.
A little pony
will not
go
easily. That will require fighting. It is unfortunate, but that is what's required. And look, we didn't become the United States by asking the British nicely. We just didn't. We took what we fought for what we have, and the Afghans are going to have to fight for that. And Will, you are right to remember that. And I have to remind myself that whenever that, just to see the optimism in the room of people who've lost everything. I didn't physically lose anything during the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and it nearly broke me. And when I see the, Afghans who have their families still behind, who can't return to their country, who still have hope, I have to take that. That is something I need to hold on to. It's sad, though, that we're here today on 9/11 and we're not looking internally. Like, where is the hope internally? I look at it with my friends. I look at Beth. I look at Will. I look at all the friends that I've made in this, and I remember the hard work that everyone does, and that there's people that still care. And I have to remind myself that despite our poor political leadership, that, one of the worst things during the withdrawal was at the end of the withdrawal, right? It was also one of the most hopeful things, right? How Afghanistan collapsed, but how people banded together. Americans put everything, cast caution to the wind. People serving in intelligence and in the military, on active duty, who just said, you know what? I don't care if I get prosecuted. I'm going to help Americans. I'm going to help Afghans. I'm going to help those in need. And I that was such a crazy emotions, for a wave of emotions, feeling just so ashamed of my country, but proud of my countrymen at the same time. So, yeah, there's hope out there to be had. I'm not the eternal pessimist. I'm just mostly a pessimist. So, well, Beth, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time on 9/11 to taking time out of your day to just join in. We have to get you back on and hear what you're working on, and just catch up.
Everybody,
it's just great to see you.
Everybody, go read Beth Bailey right now. She's one of the best voices out there on Afghanistan. She's hardworking. Fox News, Washington Examiner, her own Substack. Where else are you writing for? Sometimes?
That's pretty much it these days.
Okay. She's always writing. She's always got something out, and I always read it, and so should you. Thanks for coming on, Beth.
You guys are way too kind. I'm going to play this over and over as my mantra, when I'm trying to get myself stoked for something. This was, honestly, I wouldn't have spent today any other way. Thank you for having me. It was a really meaningful way to think about this anniversary.
Yeah, Beth, the pleasure is always ours. You take care. Best wishes to you and yours. Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's episode of Generation Jihad. Just a reminder, you can listen to us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe to Generation Jihad and leave us a review, preferably a positive one, but only if we earned it. Thanks again, and we'll see you all again real soon.